Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Dharma. In today's traveling episode, we'll be talking about how we can evolve our inner voice. The story that we'll be reflecting on this theme is called The Stonemason, and it comes from the book Tiger, Mouse, Strawberry by Yuki Senda. Here is how the story goes. In ancient times, there was a man who worked in a remote quarry. Every day, he went up the mountain to cut stones. The stonemason was a very cheerful man. Whenever he worked, he would sing happily to himself. And although he was poor, he lived a carefree life, and he knew no other way of existence, so he could not imagine a better one. One day, he was commissioned to create a statue for a wealthy merchant's house. As he walked past the doors of the house, he was very impressed. It was then that he first felt the desire to live a different life. He thought, I wish I were that rich. Then I wouldn't have to go up into the mountains daily to cut stones, no matter how strong the wind and inclement the weather. Just as this thought crossed his mind, he heard a voice say, Your wish is now my command, and from now on, all your dreams will come true. The man was startled, but thought nothing more of it and set out to return home in the evening after work. When he arrived, he was astonished to see that there was now a large and magnificent house instead of his modest home. From then on, he no longer went into the mountains to cut stones, but lived the life of a rich merchant. And he had already lived like this for a few weeks, when one insufferably hot summer day, he groaned. The heat and humidity were almost unbearable, and then, from the window of his magnificent home, he saw a king pass by. The king rode in a palanquin and was carried by a multitude of servants. In front and behind the palanquin walked a court of wealthy merchants and soldiers who followed the king. The man watched the retinue and was very impressed. Silently, he thought to himself, if only I were a king too, and I could now sit in a cool palanquin. His wish was immediately granted, and the man found himself in the palanquin and in the king's place. However, the palanquin was nowhere near as cool and calm as he had imagined. Annoyed, he looked outward at the sun that shined mercilessly high in the sky and whose strength penetrated even the walls of the king's palanquin. Then he thought to himself, I wish I were the sun. Now, he had not even finished the sentence when he saw himself as the sun. With all his might, he radiated light and warmth out into the universe and was pleased with his immense power and strength. But this feeling only lasted for a few days. On a rainy morning, his sunshine rays could not get through the thick cloud cover. Frustrated, he said to himself, I wish I were as powerful as the clouds. Not even the sun can penetrate them. And then his wish was granted, and the man did indeed turn into a cloud, and he was pleased with his ability to block the sun and laughed to himself. Eventually, however, the cloud turned to rain. The raindrops hit a rock, and the rock stood firm and rigid, causing the rain to flow around it. This annoyed him. He thought to himself, a mere rock? More powerful than me? Then I will be the rock. And thus he became a majestic rock, residing stoically on the mountain. He had not even begun to enjoy his new existence for a few hours when he noticed some unusual pounding at his feet. He looked down and, to his immense chagrin, discovered that a little man was busying himself with knocking chunks out of his immense stone. It was a stonemason. Alarmed, he asked himself, "How is this possible? A creature so small but more powerful than a stone? I wish I were that man." And so it was, and he found himself a stonemason again. Every morning, he went up into the mountains to cut stones. The work was exhausting, but he worked happily, and his heart was content, for he was finally satisfied with who he was. I really love how the story just comes full circle, where he begins as this stonemason who has never lived any other life. And he goes through this cycle of sitting in the shoes and living the life of people that he thinks has the best life, the happiest life, the most comfortable life. And yet he realizes a deep discontent in each of those lives, because the man becomes a merchant, then a king, and I find this very fantastic and very funny as well. He becomes the sun and the clouds and a stone, and none of these things are satisfying to him. And what I find so interesting about this story is how we can see that our inner voices, like the inner voice of the stonemason, can be very, very fickle. We can immediately see something on social media or when we're walking down the street and think, that person is living a much better life than me, and thus I'm going to feel bad about my life because their life seems so much better in comparison. And I think that is very much how the default inner voice works. We are not really taught to reflect deeply about our observations and our surroundings, but rather to make quick, simple judgments that allow us to assess how other people are in relation to us. But the thing about those shallow default judgments is that they're more often than not deeply incorrect, and they lack that deeper nuance that really acknowledges how complex life is for all beings. Because, and this is something I've had to remind myself, the other person that we think is living a much better life has struggles that we cannot see. They have anxieties and stresses that are invisible to the naked eye. And we can never really know what it's like to live their life unless we are actually doing it. And therefore, this constant comparison and this assumption that others are always doing better than us does so much harm than good. And this is where we have to learn to evolve this inner voice, because the inner voice is what we make of it. When we begin as younger children, our inner voice is very much a reflection of the people around us, of the things we learn, of the videos and the books that we're reading. As we become older as adults, we get to audit and evolve this inner voice to reflect the kind of existence that we would rather be in, the perspectives that we feel are the most transcendent or the most kind and compassionate. And I think that is the most important message of the story, is that the inner voice does not evolve or change on its own. We have to learn to listen to it and understand, is this helpful to me? Is this empowering? Does this create more compassion for myself and for others and for existence in general? Or does this actually close off my mind to how complex life is for others and also oversimplify my own? Because at the end of the day, just like the stonemason in the story, we often don't even realize how many merits our own life as it is right now has until it's taken from us. And then by then, it's almost too late because that life is gone and we now only get to admire it from a distance. And thus, I feel like through the story, as well as just daily observations, that it's really important to remember that our inner voice takes cues from the direction that we want it to go in. And if we want to be able to look at things from a deeper perspective, then we have to choose that and tell our inner voice to move in that direction. And therefore, we can grow closer to being more appreciative of what we have in our lives and more understanding of the difficulties that other people are facing, rather than being in this world of assumptions where we don't really look at things from a deeper angle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I am traveling currently, so I apologize if the audio quality is not as good as usual. Thank you for being here. And if you have any thoughts or questions, email me anytime at dailydharmapodcast@gmail.com. And may you have a beautiful, safe, and joyful week ahead of you. Until next week.